Let me tell you my experience. I've been here in Washington, D.C. for a number of days to deal first with the aftermath, the last couple of days of the election, and now with the legal matters that hang over. When I went to bed, which was very, very late on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, I'd say around 3 or 4 in the morning, I was quite confident that President Trump had won re-election based on every criteria that I knew from prior elections, which go back to really, with any experience, John Kennedy's. And before that, as a child, I remember Eisenhower in 52. So I'm not a baby. And he had won. And I'm going to tell you how he had won and what they hadn't called. They hadn't called Pennsylvania for him as of that time, and it was only about 81 or 82% of the vote was out at that time. I'm sorry, 65% of the vote was out, and he was ahead by 15%. Impossible to win fairly, honestly, that way, when you consider that there were votes out about evenly in Philadelphia and then in the rest of the state, or the parts of the state that were pro-Trump. In order to make that up, Biden would have to get about 70% of the vote. The only way he'd get 70% of the vote is if the vote were all from Philadelphia, where he was running about there or better. Other parts of the state, he was running almost the opposite. Trump was running up margins of 65 to 85%. So if this were a fair process, even by Fox, that would have been called for him, particularly since they called Virginia very early on with a very small sample of the vote. With Trump actually ahead in Virginia, they called it for Biden. Only Fox did. CNN still hasn't called Virginia for Biden. Michigan, he was ahead by 8% with 64% of the vote cast. Again, the votes out were in both, let's call them Trump and Biden parts of the state. If you're going to call Virginia as early as they did, and you're going to call Arizona as early as you did, with considerably less of a margin for Trump to make up, to turn those states around, than existed in Michigan for Biden, then you're being unfair. You're not applying the same standard to the same to both candidates. So those are two states that should have been called for him. Georgia and North Carolina certainly should have been called for him.